All right, students, this is the second part of Chapter 6. And if you have the book, it starts at the top of page 115. And now where the story goes is they're in Kamazotz. And Kamazotz is the evil planet far away where Father is trapped. Now, a little bit of historical background. Remember that this book was written during the Cold War. The Cold War was a kind of a war that never really happened, but it was going to happen between the United States and the Soviet Union. And they were building weapons and missiles, and the Americans were afraid that communism was going to come, and the Soviets were giving missiles to Cuba, and even me as a child in Miami, I had to practice getting under my desk in case the Soviet missiles came from Cuba. And we had this idea of, oh no, communism is coming. And with communism, the idea is everything's the same. Everyone gets the same amount of money. The buildings are the same. There's mind control. Everybody believes in the same thing. So think about that as I read in the next couple of pages about the planet Kamazotz. Okay, top of 115. Below them, the town was laid out in harsh, angular patterns. The houses in the outskirts were all exactly alike. Small square boxes painted gray. Each had a small rectangular plot of lawn in front, with a straight line of dull-looking flowers edging the path to the door. Meg had a feeling that if she could count the flowers, there'd be exactly the same number for each house. In front of all the houses, children were playing. Some were skipping rope. Some were bouncing balls. Meg felt vaguely that something was wrong with their play. It seemed exactly like children playing around any housing development at home, and yet there was something different about it. She looked at Calvin and saw that he, too, was puzzled. "Look," Charles Wallace said, "they're skipping and bouncing in rhythm. Everyone's doing it at exactly the same moment." This was so. As the skipping rope hit the pavement, so did the ball. As the rope curved over the head of the jumping child, the child with the ball got the ball. Down came the ropes. Down came the balls. Over and over again. Up, down, all in rhythm. All identical. Like the houses, like the paths, like the flowers. Then the doors of all the houses opened simultaneously, and out came a woman like a row of paper dolls. The print of their dresses was different, but they all gave the appearance of being the same. Each woman stood on the steps of her house. Each clapped. Each child with the ball caught the ball. Each child with the skipping rope folded the rope. Each child turned and walked into the house. The doors clicked shut behind them. "How can they do it?" Meg asked wonderingly. "We couldn't do it that way if we tried." "What does it mean?" "Let's go back," Calvin's voice was urgent. "Back!" Charles Wallace. "Where?" "I don't know. Anywhere. Back to the hill. Back to Mrs. Whatsit, Mrs. Who and Mrs. Which." "I don't like this." "But they aren't there. You'd think they'd come to us if we turn back now." "I don't like it," Calvin said again. "Come on." Impatience made Meg squeak. "You know we can't go back." Mrs. Which said to go into the town. She started down on the street and the two boys followed her. The houses, all identical, continued as far as the eye could reach. Then all at once they saw the same thing and stopped to watch. In front of one of the houses stood a little boy with a ball, and he was bouncing it. But he bounced it rather badly with no particular rhythm, sometimes dropping it and running after it with awkward, furtive leaps, sometimes throwing it up into the air and trying to catch it. The door of his house opened and out ran one of the mother figures. She looked wildly up and down the street and saw the children and put her hand to her mouth as though to stifle a scream, grabbed the little boy and rushed indoors with him. The ball dropped from his fingers and rolled out into the street. "We have a problem. Fortinbras is very upset. He does not like Kamazotz." "Hey, but the witch said we have to go into the town. We'll never find Father." "I don't like it." "He doesn't like it here." "Okay, go." Charles Wallace ran after it and picked it up, holding it out for Meg and Calvin to see. It seemed like a perfectly ordinary brown rubber ball. But let's take it to him and see what happens, Charles Wallace suggested, and Meg pulled his arm. Mrs. What's-it said for us to go into the town. Well, we are in town, aren't we? The outskirts anyhow. And I want to know more about this. I have a hunch it may help us later. You go on if you don't want to come with me. No, Calvin said. We're going to stay together. Mrs. What's-it said we weren't to let them separate us. But I'm with you on this. Let's knock. See what happens. They went up the path to the house, Meg reluctant, eager to get into the town. Let's hurry. Please. Don't you want to find Father? Yes, Charles read, but not blindly. How can we help him if we don't know what we're up against? And it's obvious we've been brought here to help him, not just to find him. He walked briskly up the steps and knocked at the door. They waited. Nothing happened. Then Charles Wallace saw a bell, and this he rang. They could hear the bell buzzing in the house, and the sound of it echoed down the street. After a moment, the mother figure opened the door. All up and down the street, other doors opened, but only a crack, and eyes peered toward the three children and the woman looking fearfully out the door at them. What do you want? She asked. It isn't paper time yet. We've had milk time. We've had this month's puller plush person, and I've given my decency donations regularly. All my papers are in order. I think your little boy dropped his ball, Charles said, holding it out. The woman pushed the ball away. Oh, no. The children in our section never drop balls. They're all perfectly trained. We haven't had an aberration for 3 years. All up and down the block, heads nodded in agreement. Charles Wallace moved closer to the woman and looked past her into the house. Behind her in the shadows, she can see the little boy who must have been about his own age. You can't come in, the woman said. You haven't shown me any papers. I don't have to let you in if you haven't any papers. Charles Wallace had the ball out beyond the woman so that the little boy can see it. Quick as a flash, the boy leaped forward and grabbed the ball from Charles Wallace's hand, then darted back into the shadows. The woman went very white, opened her mouth as though to say something, and then slammed the door in their faces instead. And all up and down the street, all the doors slammed. What are they afraid of? Charles Wallace asked. What is the matter with them? Don't you know? Meg asked him. Don't you know what all of this is about, Charles? Not yet, Charles Wallace said. Not even an inkling. And I'm trying, but I didn't get through anywhere. Not even a chink. Let's go. And he stumbled down the steps. After several blocks, the houses gave way to apartment buildings. At least Meg felt sure that that was what they must be. They were fairly tall, rectangular buildings, absolutely plain, each window, each entrance, exactly like every other. Then, coming toward them down the street, was a boy about Calvin's age, riding a machine that was something like a combination of a bicycle and a motorcycle. It had the slimness and lightness of a bicycle, and yet the foot pedals turned, they seemed to generate an unseen source of power so that the boy could pedal very slowly and yet move along the street quite swiftly. And as he reached each entrance, he thrust one hand into a bag he wore slung over his shoulders and pulled out a roll of papers and tossed it into the entrance. It might have been Denny's or Sandy or any one of the hundreds of boys with the newspaper route in any one of the hundreds of towns back home, and yet, as with the children playing ball and jumping rope, there was something wrong about it. The rhythm of the gesture never varied. The paper flew in identically the same arc at each doorway, landed in identically the same spot. It was impossible for anybody to throw with such consistent perfection. Calvin whistled. I wonder if they play baseball here. As the boy saw them, he slowed down on his machine and stopped, and his hand arrested as if about to plunge into the paper bag. What are you kids doing out on the street? He demanded. Only route boys are allowed out. You know that. No, we don't know it, Charles Wallace said. We're strangers here. How about telling us something about this place? You mean you've had your entrance papers processed and everything? The boy asked. You must have if you're here, he answered himself. And what are you doing here if you don't know about us? Well, you tell me, Charles Wallace said. Are you examiners? The boy asked a little anxiously. Everybody knows our city has the best central intelligence center on the planet. Our production levels are the highest. Our factories never close. Our machines never stop rolling. Added to this, we have 5 poets, 1 musician, 3 artists, 6 sculptors, all perfectly channeled. What are you quoting from? Charles Wallace asked. The manual, of course, said the boy. We are the most oriented city on the planet. There has been no trouble of any kind for centuries. All Kamazats knows our record. That is why we are the capital city of Kamazats. That is why central intelligence is located here. That is why it makes its home here. There was something about the way he said it that made a shiver run up and down Meg's spine. But Charles Wallace asked briskly, where is this central intelligence center of yours? Central, the boy corrected. Just keep going and you can't miss it. You are strangers, aren't you? What are you doing here? Actually, it's central. Are you supposed to ask questions? Charles Wallace asked, and the boy went quite white, just as the woman had. I humbly beg your pardon, I must continue my route now, or I'll have to talk my timing into the explainer. And he shot off down the street on his machine. Charles Wallace stared after him. What is it? He asked Meg and Calvin. There was something funny about the way he talked, as though he weren't really doing the talking. Do you know what I mean? Calvin nodded thoughtfully. Yeah, funny is right. Funny, peculiar. Not only the way he talked either. The whole thing smells. Come on, Meg pulled at them. How many times was it she had urged them on? Let's go find Father. He'll be able to explain all of it to us. They walked on. After several more blocks, they began to see other people, grown-up people, not children, walking up and down and across the streets. These people ignored the children entirely, seeming to be completely intent on their own business. Some of them went into the apartment buildings. Most of them were heading in the same direction as the children. As these people came to the main street from the side streets, they would swing around the corners with an odd, automatic stride, as though they were so deep in their own problems and the route was so familiar that they didn't have to pay any attention to where they were going. After a while, the apartment buildings gave way to what must have been office buildings. Great stern structures with enormous entrances. Men and women with briefcases pouring in and out. Charles Wallace went up to one of the women, saying politely, "Excuse me, but could you please tell me?" But she hardly glanced at him as she continued on her way. Look, Meg pointed ahead at them, across the square, was the largest building they had ever seen, higher than the Empire State Building, and almost as long as it was high. This must be it, Charles Wallace said. They're central intelligence, or whatever it is. Let's go on. But if Father's in some kind of trouble with this planet, Meg objected, isn't that exactly where we shouldn't go? Well, how do you propose finding him? Charles Wallace demanded. Well, I certainly wouldn't ask there. Well, I didn't say anything about asking, but we aren't going to have the faintest idea where or how to begin to look for him until we find out something more about this place, and I have a hunch that that's the place to start. And if you have a better idea, Meg, why, of course, just say so. Oh, get down off your high horse, Meg said crossly. Let's go to the old central intelligence and get it over with. I think we ought to have passports or something, Calvin suggested. This is much more than leaving America to go to Europe. And that boy and the woman both seemed to care so much about having things in proper order. And we certainly haven't got any papers in proper order. Well, if we needed passports or papers, Mrs. Whatsit would have told us so, Charles Wallace said. Calvin put his hands on his hips and looked down at Charles Wallace. Now look here, old sport. I love those 3 old girls just as much as you do, but I'm not sure they know everything. Well, they know a lot more than we do. Granted. But you know, Mrs. Whatsit talked about having been a star. I wouldn't think that being a star would give her much practice in knowing about people. Remember, Calvin's gift is communication. When she tried to be a person, she came pretty close to goofing it up. There was never anybody on land or sea like Mrs. Whatsit, the way she got herself up. She was just having fun, Charles said. If she'd wanted to look like you or Meg, I'm sure she could have. Calvin shook his head. Oh, I'm not so sure. These people seem to be people, if you know what I mean. They aren't like us, I grant you that. There's something very offbeat about them. But there are lots more like ordinary people than the ones on Uriel. Well, you don't suppose they're robots? Meg suggested. Charles Wallace shook his head. No. That boy who dropped the ball wasn't any robot, and I don't think the rest of them are either. Let me listen for a minute. They stood very still, side by side, in the shadow of one of the big office buildings. 6 large doors kept swinging open, shut, open, shut, as people went in and out, looking straight ahead, paying no attention to the children whatsoever. Charles wore his listening, probing look. They're not robots, he said suddenly. And I'm not sure what they are, but they're not robots. I could feel minds there, but I can't get at them at all. But I could feel them sort of pulsing. Let me try a minute more. The 3 of them stood there very quietly, and the doors kept opening and shutting, and the stiff people hurried in and out, walking jerkily like figures in an old, silent movie. Then, abruptly, the stream of movement thinned. There were only a few people, and these moved more rapidly, as if the film had been sped up. One white-faced man in a dark suit looked directly at the children and said, "Oh dear, I shall be late," and flickered into the building. "He's like the White Rabbit," Meg giggled nervously. "I'm scared," Charles said. "I can't reach them at all. I'm completely shut out." "We have to find Father," Meg started again. "Meg!" Charles Wallace's eyes were wide and frightened. "I'm not sure I'll even know Father. It's been so long, and I was only a baby." Meg's reassurance came quickly. "You'll know him," Baby show 30 seconds. "Of course you'll know him. The way you'd know me, even without looking, because I'm always there for you. And you could always reach in and dice a baka." "Yes," Charles punched one of the small fists into an open palm with a gesture of great decision. "Let's go to Central Intelligence." Calvin reached out and caught both Charles and Meg by the arm. "You remember when we met, you asked me why I was there, and I told you it was because I had a compulsion, a feeling, and I just had to come to that particular place at that particular moment." "Yeah, sure. Well, I've got another feeling, not the same kind, but a different one. A feeling that if we go into that building, we're going into terrible, terrible danger." So you guys notice this is the only chapter where Charlie became very upset and he was barking, because Charlie knows what Kamazotz is all about. It's a place of intense mind control, where they control your mind. And Calvin is a person of great intuition, and Meg also, and they know Father's probably in there, but if they go into that building, they're going to be walking into a world of uncertainty and terror. So stay tuned for the next chapter. Remember, guys, listen to these chapters 3 times so it really goes into your mind. And glad you're enjoying the novel. See you guys. I know.